Hey guys, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, we're really glad you joined us. Hope you like what you hear. So we have just an outstanding guest to present to you today on the podcast. Stephen went through what we consider the worst thing in the world anyone would have to go through. His son was killed when he was in the car with a drunk driver who was in an accident, and his son lost his life in the accident. And Stephen has written a outstanding book called Walk On, that are kind of notes and thoughts about what he went through, his son Jake, who lost his life. And he's going to talk to us kind of what that experience has taught him and what he's trying to do to honor the legacy of his son. So it's really powerful. Without further ado, let's bring Stephen on to the podcast now. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us here on Salty Ginger Talk. It's great to have you on the program.
Nice to be here with you, Joe.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks since we chatted. The funny story. So, Stephen's family has some property. I lived in New Hampshire for 15 years, and his family has some property up that way. And he sent me a very funny video about the state of New Hampshire. It's kind of a parody song joking around about some of the idiosyncrasies of New Hampshire. So, it's always good to have kind of a common ground right off the bat when you start off a conversation with someone. So, been really excited about having you on. I think your story is super powerful, and really excited about exposing our listeners to kind of your story and your message. And so, with that, I don't want to take up a lot more time with me talking. Would you mind just giving a brief background of yourself, and then we can just jump right into our conversation?
Yeah, so my name's Stephen Panus. As you said, I'm married. I have two boys, Jake, Liam. Jake is the oldest, Liam's the youngest. And we were living a pretty normal life. Everything was going well until August of 2020 when everything changed on a dime. And that's when my oldest son, Jake, he was 16 years old, was away with his girlfriend on a week and his girlfriend's family on a weekend getaway to Block Island, which is a small, tiny island off the coast of Rhode Island. And he was killed. She was arrested for reckless driving and driving under the influence. She was a year older, a senior. Jake was a rising junior. The mother had handed the keys of the vehicle over to her daughter and then stuffed 6 other teenage boys into the vehicle and sent them on the way so that she could go to the beach. And the girl went off the road, hit a telephone pole. Jake died, and our life blew up.
Man, that's I can't, yeah, that's wild. Getting a call like that. Certainly life-changing, for sure. Did you know the family? Had they been dating a while when this happened?
They had only been dating a few weeks. There was no father. He had passed away years prior. I lightly knew the mom. She and I stood on the same platform waiting for the train in the morning. And so I had struck up conversations with her. I didn't know her great, but I knew her, and that probably gave me a false sense of security, that she would actually be doing the right thing, that she, her last words to my wife were, "Don't worry," this was a text, "nothing to worry about. I'll be watching the kids." And she wasn't. And not only was she not watching, she was enabling.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like at that look, I've raised 3 teenage boys. You've raised boys. It doesn't really matter, boy or girl. My argument is at that age, that call it 15 to 18 boys are actually dumber than girls. But it's
100%.
not like girls are super smart. But they don't make good decisions. Like their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, and you as a parent have to be diligent about that stuff. That was why I was curious how well you knew the family. So, where were you? Were you with your family, with the rest of your family when you
Yeah,
got this call, or?
I was here in Connecticut with my wife and Liam, Jake's little brother. We just finished a bike ride, my wife and I, and we're getting ready to go to the local farmer's market when her phone rang. It was the mother. She didn't have any details other than Jake was injured. There had been an accident, but we didn't know what that meant. So we hopped in the car and began speeding to Rhode Island right away. We were 12 minutes into the ride when my wife's phone rang again. This time it was a doctor from Rhode Island who introduced himself, paused, and then said, "I'm sorry, I just pronounced your son dead." So yeah, it just was, it's life altering. It's changed everything about who I am and my life. Wouldn't wish it upon anybody, Joe.
Yeah, for sure. What was your, I guess, what was your immediate, just visceral reaction? First, let me just say, Stephen, I really am so honored that you're willing to come on and talk about this experience you went through. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I'm really sorry you and your family had to go through it, but I really appreciate you being willing to share this with our listeners, because if Stephen can deal with what he's had to deal with, everybody can deal with whatever problems they have in their life, which is the entire point of our podcast. So I just really appreciate you being willing to talk about this, and I'm really honored that you're sharing it with us. So I apologize. What was your initial, like your gut visceral reaction? What happened when your wife got that call?
You go into complete shock, utter disbelief. Everything went black. I was flying on the highway, anxious to get to Rhode Island. So I was doing like 85 in the left lane. I had to get over. I had no business being on the highway. Um, your body can't absorb it. It all of a sudden it's an out of body experience. You heard the words, but you cannot process them. You can't accept them, obviously. And it was like that for a while. And I think that's the shock protects you, because there's just no way the human body is designed to accept news like that and function without some kind of layer of protection. So it was soul crushing. Felt like somebody reached into my chest and ripped out my heart.
Yeah. Was your younger son with you at the time?
He was in the back seat, falling into the middle console, worried, heard the conversation because it came across on the car speakerphone. So we all heard it. It's just the worst. My wife screamed the most guttural, primal scream I've ever heard. Never want to hear again. The worst.
And yeah, for sure. And so did you continue on? I'm assuming you continued on to Rhode Island to kind of go
We,
see what you could see, or what did you do?
no, we didn't. The Because of the accident, they said that they were going to be airlifting Jake's body to the mainland of Rhode Island, Providence. He had to go through an autopsy because of the circumstances. Um, I was in no position to be behind a wheel. We went home, called family, some friends, and just regrouped. And by that time, the word, these kids today, the word was out on social media. And we had 1,000 people at our house comforting us. And then I just worked to do what I could to get my son's body home as fast as I could.
So it sounds like you kind of went into what can I do mode and took care of things that like needed to be taken care of. Was that do you think that was a natural reaction? Did you consciously think, hey, I've got to do something so that I don't just lose my mind here? Or what were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking. You just go into pure survival mode and you do what you need to do. And I think men and fathers, we do that. Our job is to protect our family and provide and love and take care. So my wife was a mess. My other son was a mess. I was a mess, but I had to do what I needed to do. And I didn't know what needed to be done necessarily. I just knew getting Jake home was a priority. And I did what I thought I needed to do in the moment. I tried to be, the rock as much as I could for my wife and son. But at some point, grief is relentless. It's fierce and it's really dark. And I was a zombie for year one, Joe. I don't remember much of year one.
Hmm.
Just
Were
little
there
fragments in there.
Sure, sure. That makes sense to me. Like uh in that situation, I think you're right. I think probably your body's response to protect you is to kind of like numb everything, because if it didn't, like, what I don't even know what you would do. Like it's probably like a self-preservation thing to kind of
100%.
temper things down, right?
Yeah, totally. It took months for if not close to a year, for my brain to fully accept that he was forever gone and he wasn't going to walk back up the driveway ever again and walk in the house and ask what's for dinner. And, it's a hard thing to really wrap your mind around. But it felt like the best way I can describe it is like he was abducted by aliens. One minute he
Mhm.
was there, and then the next he was gone, never coming home. His luggage came home, his friends came home. Jake didn't.
Yeah, you said there was other children in the car. Was anyone else killed?
No one else was killed. One boy was airlifted with serious injuries. He's recovered and is totally fine. Um, Jake was the lone death.
Mm. And what repercussions did the girl face for driving drunk, and or the mom face for giving her the keys?
Well, start with the girl. Not much. She was treated with kid gloves by the state of Rhode Island. It was pretty embarrassing. We weren't looking to ruin her life. Not that we had any say in it. You don't have any say in a criminal proceeding as a victim. So, but we thought there should be accountability for sure. The natural consequence, right? You make choices, there's a consequence. And she spent 1 year basically in home detention, but she was allowed to go to school with an ankle bracelet, allowed to go to medical appointments and things like that. But what kind of message does that send when she's walking back into the same school that my son wasn't able to walk back into? And then she spent like a month or two at a high-end addiction home. And that was it. It was she's on a suspended sentence, probation. She's being followed. She is a felon, but it was a slap on the wrist. It was like someone stole a pack of gum and a child died. State of Rhode Island is, one of the smallest states in the union, and the judge and the county weren't equipped to handle a case like this, a situation like this. They just don't deal with it. They deal with probate and divorces, family court stuff. The mother, there's nothing criminally they could do, surprisingly. And we're coming up on 5 years this August, and we're still tied up in litigation.
Where did they get? Do you know where they got the alcohol from? The driver got the alcohol from?
I really can't, because we're still in litigation, I can't go into
I understand. Yeah, I'm not trying to. I'm trying to. The whole reason I'm asking isn't to pry; it's to give cautionary thoughts to our listeners. It's
Yeah, no, I
the
respect
only
it.
reason I'm asking. Yep.
Yeah, look, I wish I could talk more about it, but I
Yeah,
can't. My hands are tied.
completely understand. So, yeah. So Jake is the lone casualty, which is a gut punch. Clearly, understand that. What do you do from there? Like, how does your family move forward from that day? I know you said the first year was like kind of a dull, like white noise to you, and it's tough to remember a lot of things. But what do you recall? Like, how did you deal with it with your wife? How did you deal with it with your younger son? They had to be going through their own experiences as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Grief is an individual journey. Men and women grieve differently. So there was all these layers upon layers, like peeling an onion back, right? There was just so many layers to it. It was challenging, obviously, for my wife and I at different times. You are stressed out to the max. You're not yourself. You can't think straight. My wife she was a mess for years. It was terrible. I felt there's nothing worse, I think, than seeing someone you deeply love suffer and you can't do anything to fix it. That was painful, and I had to learn to adjust to that and learn to just be with her when she screamed and when she cried and sobbed, and hold her and give it space. And that took a little while, because that's not something we're like, designed for. I don't know if anyone's designed for that. It's experience, right? Sadly. My both my wife and son didn't want to live at different points in time. So my focus was collective survival. I was pretty broken, but as broken as it was, I knew that I had to be there for both of them and for all of us. About 3 or 4 months in, I looked at Liam one day. He was 11 years old. I was 52 at the time. And said, man, I'm crushed. I'm a grown-ass man. And I'm struggling. How's an 11-year-old boy supposed to process this? How's he supposed to deal with losing his beloved brother? So I asked him to go upstairs and grab a buck knife and meet me outside. And he came back down the stairs and met me. And we walked across our property over to an old mature tree. And I had him carve a swath of bark off the tree. And he did. He carved kind of like a rectangle shape. And he looked at me and he said, now what, Dad? And I said, well, now we're going to watch this tree regrow new bark. It's going to heal itself. And it's going to take time. It's going to look different. Could be a different color. It's going to feel different. It may not cover the whole scar. And like this tree, that's what our hearts are going to do. And it's going to take a lot of time. And I'm not going to lie to you, Liam. We're never going to be the same. We're forever changed. But we can together walk out of this hell and find joy again one day in life and find a way to honor Jake. And I wanted Liam to believe in himself, as much as in me, but it was more important that he believed in himself and believed that to be patient and with himself and not to put any unnecessary burdens or time pressures on, that it was going to take a long time. And his timeline may be different from mine and may be different from Kelly's. And they're all different. And you got to do what you got to do. And if you need help, ask. And we all got help. We all got a lot of therapy. We needed it. My wife still sees our therapist. I talk to him. I don't see him as frequently now, but he's a good friend, become a really good friend. And I don't know if we would have made it without therapy, honestly, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I appreciate you letting the audience know. Like, there's some things that are just too big. There's just some things that you've got to ask for help on. And I just can't imagine anything worse than losing a child. I'm not trying to imagine it, but like, I think it's the worst thing that can happen to. Yeah.
When people say I can't imagine, I say, don't even try.
Yeah, I think it's the worst thing in the world anyone has to deal with. I genuinely do. Losing a child, I think, is the worst thing in the world. I can't think of anything worse.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking as a father of 3 sons, you had to be worried about Liam in a crazy amount through this whole process, didn't you?
Oh yeah. I remember the first time we put him into someone else's car, even though it was another parent.
Right.
Put him in the car, and the lump in your throat just comes right up. You're like, what happens is when you go through something like this, you worry about the next shoe dropping. Now that this has happened, anything can happen. Because you don't believe in anything anymore. Your faith system, your belief system, everything is just blown to smithereens. And so you have trust in nothing and no one. And you tread very carefully. You create a safe bubble. You create really healthy boundaries. You say no to a lot of things. I was definitely worried about Liam, and we had to change his school 2 years in. He was struggling. He wanted to, and I respected it. He wanted to go somewhere where he wasn't known as Jake's little brother, where he had a clean slate, a white canvas, and he could just be Liam. So he went away for a year to a private school. He lived with us, but I drove him to the school. And he did a year there, and then he came back for high school, and he's doing great now. He's a sophomore. I couldn't be more proud of Liam and who he's become. He's very mature emotionally mature for his age. And that's one of the things that you talked about, like mentioning therapy, right? One of the big lessons I learned in this, and it's hard for men to discuss this, is our vulnerability is our strength. And it's hard for men to be vulnerable. I wasn't taught that, and I don't think a lot of men are. We're taught to get knocked down, get back up again, don't cry. But when you lose a kid, you don't just cry, you weep until your bones rattle. It's the worst. And we always think we're alone in our circumstances, right? And we feel alone, most of us, whatever happens to us. And the reality is, once you talk about it, you realize that you're not alone and that there are people that want to help you and are willing to help you.
And how did you find some of those people through your process of trying to uh, heal from this? I don't even know if it's the right way to say it, but to live with it.
Yeah, so our therapist my wife found him through a good friend. He's based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he's done nothing but grief therapy for 40 years. He's remarkable. He's just been a lifesaver, really cool guy, and um, truly had our backs at every turn. If I call him today and say, "Hey man, I need an emergency session," which I've done plenty of times, he's there. And so that was the start. And then obviously our close friends and family rallied. We don't have any family that live super close to us. We're all kind of spread out like seeds. So our family was there obviously in the immediate aftermath. And then like anything else, life goes on, right? People have to go back to their own lives, and the world only moves in one direction, and that's forward. So we've always relied on good friends, and we've got some great friends, but you also lose friends in this process. There's a lot of people that aren't comfortable being around grief, aren't comfortable being around vulnerability. So it's a mixed bag of when you go through something like this, you gain and you lose. But again, I was focused on just how we could walk on.
Yeah. So speaking of walk on, that's the title of the book you wrote about this whole experience. I'd love if you could talk a little bit about what motivated you to write the book, what that process looked like, how you felt going through that process, and then we could talk about the book itself.
Yeah, I didn't start out intending to write a book, Joe. I started to write because I had all these feelings, anger, bitterness, negativity, sadness, profound grief, trauma, rage against our circumstances. I started to write a goodbye letter to Jake. I needed to put all this out in a healthy way rather than spew it on a third party or my wife or son or anybody for that matter. So I started to write a goodbye letter to Jake, and it went in stop and starts. So it was very hard and difficult and painful. And then one day I came across a folder, and in it was a bunch of notes I had written to Jake. And I started this tradition when he was 5. At the age he became, capable of reading, and it continued with Liam when he was able to. And I wrote morning messages on Post-it sticky notes, the yellow Post-it sticky notes, and they were quotes and messages, quotes from famous people and unknown people, my own messages, and they were about character values and traits and positivity. And I was trying to impart wisdom and inspiration into their developing heart, mind, and souls. And when I ran across this folder, I shook my head and I was like, what a bunch of bullshit, right? Does this mean anything? And I really had to sit with them and question the veracity and of what I modeled and written to my boys. And so I started, as in the process of examining those, I started to relive moments with Jake. And Jake was a pretty unique kid. He was very mature for his age. By age 5, Joe, he could hold conversations with adults, look them in the eye, shake their hands. He was this magnetic personality that just when he walked into a room, he lit it up. He just had that power. Super authentic, and he had a way of lifting everybody up he encountered. It was just his way, brought joy. So I started to write about those messages I wrote Jake, and then apply them to Jake, apply them to grief, and I wrote the book to help Liam. And it was just going to be something I gave to Liam. But when I finished, I realized maybe this can help more than just Liam. In doing it, it took 2 years. I realized people don't talk about this stuff, especially men. And this needs to be talked about more, because the reality is we're all dealing with grief. Grief comes in many different shapes and sizes and forms. It's not always death. Your relationship could suffer. You could separate or divorce. Your house could burn down from a fire or get blown over by a tornado. You could suffer a financial crisis, suffer from addiction, get a fatal health diagnosis. There's a million different things that happen to us every day that cause grief, and we don't know how to deal with it. So that was how I looked at it, and I said, I've got nothing to lose. So I sent out a book proposal to about 40 different publishers, and I heard back from 4 with interest, which, was kind of surprised me.
Mm,
And I ended up going with Kohler Publishing, Kohler Books out of Virginia Beach, great company. They've been wonderful, and the book's done really well. All the proceeds support the scholarships that we created to honor Jake, the Jake Panus walk-on scholarships. Um, and it was a Good Morning America buzz pick. It was just recently an Eric Hoffer International Book Award category finalist. So I've been humbled by the response. I've gotten emails and phone calls from people, and that's the best part, is when people tell me it helped them
yeah.
in whatever they're dealing with, because we all suffer. And so no matter what happens, how it happens, why it happens, you got to find a way to walk on, and the answers are right within us. We often look externally for answers, and they're not there. They're right in here.
Yeah. You've referenced a couple of times about men not being comfortable being vulnerable, not talking about their problems. Joe Rogan one time said most men lead a life of quiet desperation, and I think he's right. One thing I've noticed about, because like I haven't gone through anything near the experience that you have, but as a parent, you want good things for your kids and you worry about them, and
Yeah.
you try to provide opportunities for them to communicate. And one thing I've noticed with men is they tend to communicate better in what's more like a peer setup where they're shoulder to shoulder versus face to face. And so I'll do things like golf, or we'll watch sports. um,
Well
and
said.
yeah, just when you look at the social settings where men are the most comfortable actually opening up, like women prefer to be face to face, like sit across from each other and drink a cup of coffee and have a conversation and read the body language. Men like to kind of stare off into the distance and talk to their buddy or whoever it is that's sitting next to them. Have you learned anything, or so we'll come back to the book, but you've done all sorts of engagements around the book, and you're a speaker and you talk to all sorts of different groups. What have you learned from that that you can share with men in particular on how to get better at this? What do they do when they find themselves laying awake at night or swallowing their emotions? How do they overcome that?
Ask for help. Starts with that, right? It's reaching out to a good friend, a family member, a priest, minister, whatever, whoever you trust. And you'd be surprised that how much and how ready that person's going to be to step up for you. And I know that's a hard thing. And usually that no matter what we do in life, usually that first step is always the hardest. And I think and I've seen it, and thankfully I think the tide is turning a little bit where more men are asking for help, realizing that they can't do it alone. I always joke when I talk to people that, especially my talks, that I've never seen anybody climb a mountain by themselves, because they literally haven't. They might have done it physically all by themselves up the mountain, but to get there, it took so many people to get them there, to train them, to inspire them, to motivate them. Someone, many people along the way. And if you look at it like that, then you're less afraid, maybe, or less inhibited, so that you feel strong enough. And then when you realize that vulnerability is a strength, then it becomes, and you realize how easy it is. Like, dude, I need help. I'm struggling, and it's okay. That's the other thing I tell people all the time. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be struggling. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to not want to get out of your jammies, not get out of bed, not want to shower for 4 days, not want to leave your house for 2 weeks or 2 months. That's normal. And if we start treating it more like, hey, this is a normal thing. But what's also normal is asking for help so that you don't stay in that spot.
Yep. Yeah. And look, for anyone listening, especially the men, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you soft. It doesn't make you less of a man. I would argue it actually does the opposite. I think it shows that you're a critical thinker. I think it shows that you're strong enough to say you're vulnerable and say, I'm not okay. I need some help here. So I think it's the exact opposite of the way that a lot of us were raised. And Stephen and I are very similar in age. I'm 53. I think you're a couple of years ahead of me, but we're both
Hmm.
Gen X guys. And it was tape an aspirin to it, rub some dirt on it, quit crying, you little pussy, all of those things, right?
Exactly.
And they're not true. They're just not true.
So
So
true. Yeah. It's thankfully it is a different era. And like I said, I do think there's been a shift and hopefully more of it can happen and we can talk about this subject more. Not that I want to just walk around and talk about grief all the time because I don't.
sure.
Um, but talking about things that are hard is necessary.
I love that there's been a lot of in the professional leagues and professional athletes who've come out and talked about mental health and asking for help.
Yeah.
And I think those are great programs because I think a lot of young men look up to those guys and they're kind of the epitome of masculine in a lot of people's eyes. And is some part of that true? Sure, some part of it's true, but they're still guys. They're still just people like
Yeah.
you and me. And I know you have had a lot of interactions with the sports world. I played baseball at a very high level and played with a lot of guys who wound up playing in the major leagues. They're just guys. They're still just guys, man. But I'm glad that they're using their platform to try to help out on this subject because I think it's super important. So you've done a ton of speaking engagements, and so go ahead.
I was just going to say, you bring up sports, and that's a good one because think about all the athletes now, well, and even in the past who had sports psychologists, but they were kind of quietly on the side. But they need them because they're looking for that competitive edge. And the mental part of the game, as you know, is just as important as the physical part, if not more sometimes. Because there's a lot of guys that have the talent physically, but they don't have the mental capacity in the intellectual side of the game and the mental fitness to endure and get through things that maybe others, can or can't. So I think seeing that enter the sports arenas now is a big deal. I know it's still kind of a tough one in football where they go, oh, well, the Dak Prescott is weak because he admitted, I don't want my quarterback to be weak like that. And it's like, that's not a weakness, actually, that's leadership. Um, so anyway, you were going to say?
No, I think you brought the point home perfectly. It's a natural part of life. You're not going to be 100% all the time. You're not going to be able to go it alone all the time. Hell, just look at the team sports. Like Patrick Mahomes gets all of the, I shouldn't say all because that's not true, but he gets a ton of the credit for Kansas City being Kansas City. He's got six guys keeping guys away from him every single play. He's got skill players he gets the ball to that get it into the end zone. He's got a quarterbacks coach. He's got an offensive coordinator. He's got an offensive line coach. He's got a head coach. He's got all sorts of support around him to make him Patrick Mahomes. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you want to say, you know what, I want to be the Patrick Mahomes of whatever it is I do. Let's say you want to be the Patrick Mahomes of being an artist or an attorney or a plumber. Doesn't matter. You're going to need help. And there's lots of people out there will help you, but you got to tell people that you want the help and you got to be willing to accept it. And
Yeah. And put in the
both,
work.
yeah, that's right. That's right. You can't push someone up a ladder. They got to climb a little bit on their own, right? That's how
Yeah.
it works. So, but out of this whole process, you've done a ton of speaking engagements. What do you think what's the biggest comment or challenge you hear from your engagements with outside groups that are important for people to understand? Hey, there's tons of people that think or feel this particular thing, so you're not alone when it's happening to you.
Yeah, I think people, the biggest one is like, how do I turn pain into purpose? How do I find meaning in life? Um, how do I, where are the answers? How do I overcome whatever issue, struggle, hardship I'm dealing with? And so I just try to guide people there and give them, obviously anecdotally my experience in what I did, but also letting them know that it's not one playbook, right? What worked for me is not going to work for you. There are certain strategies that work for everybody, but at the end of the day, you got to do what works for you. The timing's different, as I mentioned. Everyone, it's a it's a your own pathway, and you got to do it on your terms, on your timing.
Yeah. You talked about the scholarships you set up to honor Jake in his memory. How did you come to that decision? What led you to these scholarships?
The first one we created was in the days after his passing. We were getting so many flowers. We were inundated. We didn't need any more flowers. And my wife said, Jake, a year prior, had gone on a church youth group mission trip out to Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And he came home transformed from that experience. He was upset, actually, with the inequalities he witnessed between how the kids out there were living and how he was living. And the disparities were noticeable to him and, like I said, upsetting. He wanted to make a difference. He never got a chance to go back. The trip was canceled because of COVID, and then he died 2 months later. So we thought Jake would want to help those kids. He wanted to. So we set up a scholarship in partnership with Red Cloud Indian School that awards college scholarships to kids from a certain area on the reservation, Red Shirt Table, where Jake did the mission work, who graduate from the school. And we've awarded 3 in the last 4 years, full scholarships, or not full, but nearly, to 3 young Lakota women. Very proud of all of them. And then the second scholarship is at the University of South Carolina, where I went. Jake wanted to follow in my footsteps. As his father, I wanted to make sure he got there, even in spirit. So it was through a variety of circumstances that Shane Beamer, the head football coach, reached out. He heard of Jake's story. He called 2 days before our first Christmas, which was a pretty joyless time in our house, and spoke. He talked to Liam. He reminded me of Jake, the way he was looking out for Liam. And we hung up, and I turned to my wife and I said, I think I know how I'm going to get Jake to South Carolina. And so I let the holidays pass, and I reached back out to Shane, texted him. I said, I have an idea. Create a walk-on football scholarship for kids who exhibit Jake's leadership qualities, care for their community, grit, toughness on the field. Walk-on athletes are typically underrated, undersized. Maybe they went to a small school, high school, and they walk on and trying to earn a scholarship. So Shane, being a walk-on football player himself at Virginia Tech, totally embraced it, loved it. And we quickly raised the funds. It's an endowed scholarship now at the University of South Carolina. They've awarded 4 in the last 4 years, all great kids. Several of them have been all SEC academic, honor roll kids. I've gotten close to a lot of them. And the most important part of it, Joe, is that, and this is the most meaningful thing to a bereaved father, is that each one of these kids who receives a scholarship now carries a part of Jake with them in their life.
Yeah, that's a great way to honor his memory. That's such a cool thing. So these are endowed now. If our listeners wanted to donate or contribute, were they able to or no?
Yeah, totally. There's scholarship links on my website, Stephen Panus, PANUS.com. We're getting ready to set up a third scholarship, a third Jake Walk-On here in Connecticut with the Wakeman Boys and Girls Club to help young kids who are underprivileged and underserved have a chance to go to college through aid. So we're excited about that. That should be launching in the next month or so. But yeah, everything's at the website. They can learn there about the scholarships, my speaking, the book, everything, how to contact me.
Excellent. And just for listeners too, we'll put links to Stephen's website and to his book in the show notes, so you don't have to go looking for those. You can just go down there and click on the link, and it'll take you right to either his website or to his book. Let's if we could, let's pivot back to your book, Walk On. How did you bring order to kind of all of this chaos and grief and confusion that you had going in your mind while you were putting it together? What kind of structure did you put around it?
Well, I didn't start writing until deep into year 2, so I had to become stable first, honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the structure was really the messages I had written and shared with my boys, and I let that kind of dictate. And then there was endless stories to choose from that involved Jake as well as Liam, to tie it in. And it just kind of, in a weird way, it felt like it wrote itself. Once I started and realized directionally where I was going, it didn't take long.
Yeah. Did you find that process therapeutic? Was it helpful for you to deal with your grief through that process?
At the time doing it, you don't think that because it hurts. But as I reflect back now, at some level, it probably was. I'm just not sure if I had the capacity to be fully aware of in the moment how much it was helping me. The
Sure.
scholarships gave me a lot of purpose. When I awarded the first scholarship, I spoke at the University of South Carolina. I went down, it was September 2021. And this was the first scholarship of all of them that we awarded. And Shane Beamer gave me the opportunity to speak to the entire team and the coaching staff. It was like 7:45 in the morning. It was a huge theater. And the irony of all this, Joe, is that I never considered myself a public speaker. It wasn't something that I sought out. I didn't think I was good at it. It's probably in some ways feared it. Like a lot of people, right? Public speaking is daunting, and it wasn't my thing. I was the guy, I was an agent. I was the guy behind the camera. My clients were the ones on the camera under the spotlight. And Jake was kind of like that. So now it's like Jake is kind of coming through me. And I stood up there and I don't know how I did that one, but I did somehow. And it was pretty powerful. And when I walked out of that building, the Football Operations Center at South Carolina that morning, after awarding scholarship, seeing the joy on Matthew Bailey's face, the first recipient, and I saw Jake in his face, I was emotionally exhausted, just drained. But and I just got in my car and bawled and let it all out. And then it hit me afterwards that I felt purpose again in my life. I felt like I'm making a difference and helping others. And one thing led to another, and I started speaking, and then it just kind of mushroomed from there. And now, as you said, I go around the country giving inspirational talks to corporations, schools, athletic teams, just trying to share wisdom and inspiration and make this world better.
Yeah, you'd referenced that Jake had gone on that trip that led to the first scholarship through church. Did you lean on your faith heavily when this happened, or how did that play into your process?
Yeah, I did. I mean, honestly, at first you question it a little bit, like why? Why did this happen? Why did you, almost personally, like, why'd you do this, God? Like, why would you allow this?
Mm.
And I worked through that fairly quickly in year one. Like, I realized that I don't believe God had a hand in it at all. I don't believe he has a hand in our death. And yeah, my faith has been a big part of it. And my faith is based on a lot of things. It's my upbringing, obviously, in church. It's also Native American lore. It's also Buddhist. There's a whole kind of pot of gumbo of spirituality that goes on with me. But it was the main thing was I was raised to be very positive and optimistic by my parents, and that helped when this hit to kind of land on that. Even though I was down and out, and it took a while to just get to my knees. I was never hopeless. I was helpless, but never hopeless, and I think that really made a difference.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I keep processing in that situation. There's like nothing you can do to make it better. Like it's not going to change, and you have to learn to live with it. I've heard others that have experienced the same thing say you never get over it. It's always there, but you learn to build a life after it happened. Is that what you have found has gone on with you and your family?
Yeah, we view it as a life sentence. You carry it, and you find a way to carry it. Sometimes they use the word integrate, but I think you carry it. And some days it's super heavy, other days it's a little bit lighter. But there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about Jake 10,000 times a day. You can't. He left a really big footprint, and he did a lot in 16 years, more than some people do with an entire life. He lived in every time zone and knew people all over this country. So there's a lot of emotional triggers, going places, hearing things, seeing things. But you do find a way. It takes a lot of time. We're coming up on year 5, and I don't cry as much as I once did.
Yeah.
Um, but I still have my moments. I still get kicked in the gut and feel it and know when I need to take a break, step back, sit down, whatever.
Yeah. How could you not? Like, I mean, I don't know how you could not do that. It's just, yeah, it's just one of those life altering things that, it's kind of before and after, right? It's like,
Totally. Yeah. And your perspective changes on everything. I look at life now and it's a concept. It's not mine. It goes back as far as 700 AD by a scholar named Hassan al-Basri. It's 3 days. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yesterday's come and gone. We can't impact it. We can't change it. We can learn from it. But what has happened has happened. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed to either of us right here, right? We could plan for stuff tomorrow. We can worry about stuff tomorrow, but where's that going to get us, right? It may never happen. But today, that's what we got. So I live for today, in the moment, way more in the moment. I don't plan ahead a lot of things. I go one day at a time. I'm super grateful for what I do have, and try to find joy in the little moments. And that's the thing. The reality is that the small things matter the most. And it sucks that you got to get like hit like this to really embrace that. And I always tell people, don't take anyone or anything for granted. We have such a we get caught up in our worlds and they shrink right down, right? And we just act like everything's just on autopilot.
yeah,
And then something like this happens and you realize it's not. And you realize how little control you have over things. You really control what you don't control what happens to you in life, but you control what you do and feel about what happens to you.
yeah, really, really well said. And I love the yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We actually talk quite a bit about that on the podcast. And to your point, you don't want to have the life altering experience that Stephen had to make you realize that you can control how you approach that in your life. But a lot of times you have to make a conscious effort, um, to do that. I had a heart procedure, and this pales in comparison, but, it's a similar experience. I had a heart procedure a couple of years ago, and as they were wheeling me down the hallway to go into the operating room, I wasn't worried. I wasn't concerned. I wasn't through the whole process. I should have been, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I remember thinking in the hallway, sometimes people don't wake up from these. Like that thought just popped into my head, like this could be it. You don't know. You don't know if you're going to wake up or not.
Yeah.
Um, and my approach on life absolutely was altered just by that one little thought in my head being wheeled down that hallway. And previously, I placed a premium on work, on achieving, on accomplishing, on et cetera, et cetera. And I certainly don't think I was a bad father, or a bad husband, or a bad person, but I certainly
Yep.
prioritized my work and my accomplishments over a lot of other things in my life that I should not have. And I've made a conscious effort of that over the last several years, but I'm not doing it anymore. Because you don't know that, I wound up in that hospital. Like, I didn't feel good one morning, and that night I was having that surgery. Like, I went out to walk my dog and I like didn't have any energy, and went there and they said, "Yeah, we need to get you on the table like real quick."
Wow.
So yeah, I again, pales in comparison, but I understand the thought process. Anyone's life altering event can be different. It might have happened to you when you were a kid, and something terrible happened to you when you were a kid. That might be your before and after.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen's so good to share his with us and kind of walk us through what he's done, um, to kind of rebuild his life and or pick up his life after this terrible event happened to him. But you, as the listeners, yours might have happened to you already, and you might be repressing it. You might not know it, but really think about it. Really think about, you only get a set number of years, and you don't know what those years are. In Stephen's case, unfortunately for his son, it was a very short number of years, and he's still trying to, kind of move forward and honor the memory of his son, and really kind of make his life meaningful in relation to the event that happened to him. So Just something for the listeners to think about. Like you can do this without a life altering event like the one we're talking about here. Um, what were
Exactly.
you, what were you? So I just shared my stuff, probably talked way more than I should have. However, what's changed from your approach to life before, like specifically, were you a big workaholic guy? Were you a big travel guy? Did anything change after?
Yeah, everything changed. I left my job last May. I've been in sports and entertainment my whole career. Um, I I don't have nearly the energy that I once had. Um, um, what I do day to day is totally different. How I live, how my family lives, um, everything, my boundaries, what I eat. I mean, it's just been a full 180 across the board on everything, and just focused on what matters, right? And prioritize relationships, and friendships, helping people, being kind, loving people. That's what we're here to do. It's really that simple, right? And just focusing on that.
Yeah. Um, is there a certain group or type of group that you speak to a lot? Is it companies? Is it sports teams, or is it very eclectic?
It's very eclectic. I've spoken at high schools, colleges and universities, corporations, grief groups. I was just in Louisville last Monday. I'm headed down to Atlanta in July for a talk with a banking convention. So it ranges. The reality is that everybody needs to hear this. So it's good for teenagers as well as adults. Because like you said, it doesn't matter what age you are. It never hurts to be awakened to what matters most.
Yeah. What's your approach in your speaking? Do you tell Jake's story and then your takeaways from it, or like how do you
Yeah,
convey the message to your audience?
I tell a little bit of my story of um I talk about purpose and where my purpose was prior to having a family, and then how it shifted when I became a father, and then how it shifted again when I lost it when Jake died, and then how I got it back, and the what I think matters most in life, and the skill, the leadership traits and values that are most important, and how to approach life, and to do it in a way that's helpful, not harmful, to others, and contributing to the betterment of society, and making this world a lot better. Because we're all in it together, and we're here to help one another. But we act like we're not. We allow the media and social media to create these divides. We're really a lot more connected than we ever want to admit. We just need to start acting like it. And one of my big takeaways, Joe, is I tell people my perspective now is when I see people, I see everybody with an imaginary backpack on. And in that backpack is their own suffering. And if we can look at each other like that, and we treat each other a lot differently, and we help each other, and we realize we're in it together instead of competing.
Yeah, there's very few things in life that are actually zero sum, right? Most things in life are not I win, you lose. Most things in life are we could do better together if we're willing to collaborate and communicate. And I feel like that's a big challenge we have in our society. It's one of the things I really enjoy about the podcast. Now, your story and the events that have happened to you are germane to just you. And, obviously it's a very heavy topic, but we have lots of folks on the podcast who experience different things. We had a guest on whose episode is going to air, and she was the victim of sexual assault and incest as a young lady. And she talked about how she got through life and how she's compartmentalized that and the coping mechanisms that
Mm-hmm.
she's developed. We got a woman that's coming on later this week that's really kind of like a naturopathic person, and we're agnostic to all of it. We just want to expose the audience because what may work for me may or may not work for you. And it's not my place to judge somebody else's approach. Now, if somebody
Yep.
came on and was making anti-Semitic remarks or racist remarks or misogynist remarks, we would jump in and stop that from happening. But we're fortunate that on our podcast, we attract a really high caliber of person. You're a great example of that. And so it's people that are introspective and people that are trying to make both themselves and through that process, the world a little bit better place every day. And it's amazing to me how difficult that can be for two people just to have a conversation because of like subjects and topics that just don't matter at all. Like they're just not important, but people will terminate friendships over them
Yep.
or hold grudges over them. And it's such a poor approach. And we would all just be better off if we could just drop the facade and say, here's what I'm doing well at. Here's what I'm not doing well at. Maybe I could help you where you're not doing well. Maybe you could help me where I'm not doing well. And we'd all be better off. But
100%.
yeah, I would think that would be one of the most rewarding things about speaking is when someone shares that with you and lets you know that you've impacted them in a positive way.
Yeah, it's been the number one for me, the number one takeaway. Hearing how it's impacted positively someone's life and changed something for the better, made them rethink how they approach it or live, or some small detail in their life that they do differently. So yeah, it's been incredibly rewarding, and continue to speak on it, and hopefully more and more people read the book, and the proceeds benefit the scholarship. I don't make a dime from it, so I appreciate being on your show, Joe.
Yeah, well, we really, really appreciate you coming on, Stephen, and I really appreciate you being so willing to share such a hard thing to talk about. And I would just say to the listeners, this is a great example. You heard Stephen talk earlier about a lot of people couldn't participate in the process or be supportive, and we're not judging those people. We're not saying negative things about those people, but I would encourage you to just think about that. If you're pulling back from or not wanting to become involved in something, is it because you're uncomfortable or because you don't want to help the other person? I bet a lot of times it's because you're uncomfortable. And that's where we talk about being brave and having
Yeah,
courage, you know?
totally. In fact, you often hear this, like people say, I don't know what to say when someone dies. Well, I tell people this, newsflash. There isn't anything you can say that's going to make them feel better. So just say
Mm,
you're sorry and hug them.
mm.
That's it. You know, you don't have to come up with any magic words, because there aren't any magic words that would make me feel better in the moment or even today, other than someone acknowledging my son, say his name, say her name, hug them, and say you're sorry, and be there. Show up, right? Show up for them, because that's big. It's really big. You can fake a lot of things in life, but you can't fake showing up.
Yeah, I love that. And that to me, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where, you know, men communicate much better in a peer to peer type situation when you're sitting shoulder to shoulder. May not seem like you're doing anything, but sitting in a golf cart with a guy while you're playing around with them, it can make a huge difference. Sitting
Hmm.
in a car next to him while you take a drive down to the auto shop store and buy some oil to change the oil, that can make a huge difference. It may not seem like it, but those little things sometimes can make all the difference in the world. And to Steven's point, you know, showing up is the most important part. Just be there. Just people know they can count on you. That
Yeah,
sometimes that's enough.
it is. It can be, for sure. I had a guy mow my lawn for 4 months. Another one walked our dogs for 3 months, and we had a meal train for, this is astounding, 1 year and 2 months.
Wow, what a great. So you were surrounded by a lot of really good people. A lot of
We
really
were
good
a
people that just want to make sure you and your family were okay.
lot of gratitude for each and every one of them, because they lifted us up when we needed it.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you see in the future? I know you said day to day, totally got it. I'm not asking for some 10-year prognostication, but if you could pick it, how would things unfold for you and your family from here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd like to see Liam graduate high school and go on to college and just be happy. Um, that's what we want for our children. For me, I'd like to continue to speak and help others. Um, I'm writing my second book. I just got greenlit by my publisher for book number 2. This one is going to be a novel. So I'd probably write more if the opportunities arise. So for me, it's writing and speaking and just helping out as much as I can. I volunteer in our community through the Boys and Girls Club. I coach youth football and basketball, and I really enjoy that and helping these little kids chase their dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I always got a ton. I coached all not all, but I coached a lot of our sons' sports when they were young. And I always told parents, and I had the fortunate experience of playing past high school and having a chance to sign a professional contract. And you can appreciate it. I would have been I was a right-handed pitcher through the high 80s, low 90s. There was thousands of guys just like me. So I would have been a
Mhm.
free agent. They didn't need to waste a draft pick on a guy like me. I would have been a free agent signing. And but I loved every minute of it. I'm not kidding you. You would have to if I had met my wife and got married, you would have to drag me out of the clubhouse while I was holding on to the door trying to stay because I
Oh
loved
yeah,
playing baseball that much. But 33 years later, I have zero. People always ask me, "You walked away, don't you regret it?" I've never once thought twice about it because I've got such a good thing with my wife and our family. But when I was coaching the kids, I would have parents say, Jimmy wants to be a professional blah. And I'm like, no, you want Jimmy to be, let's just let
yeah,
Jimmy be, let's just let Jimmy be 10. All right.
yeah,
Jimmy's 10.
exactly.
Let's let Jimmy be 10.
Yeah, let's let Jimmy play three sports instead of just baseball year round.
Exactly. Do you think he should specialize? I was always like, no, he should not specialize. That's a insanity.
Yeah,
A 10-year-old
exactly.
kid doesn't know what he wants. You're his parent. You have to step in and create some level of sanity in this world. And right now you're not doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all those experiences are what lead us to grow up to be the people we are, and you're depriving your kids of those experiences if you don't do that. So, but Stephen, like one of the kind of the last thing we do on the podcast is we kind of open the floor up and say, is there any questions I haven't asked you or any subjects that you feel important or are important that we haven't talked about that you want to get out to the audience?
yeah, I think we really covered it, Joe. It was great hanging out with you and talking about it. It's not easy, but I appreciate you being so kind and compassionate and listening and supporting. And then again, just for the listeners out there, just help someone, help a friend, help a stranger, give somebody a lift. We all need it from time to time, and it's why we're here.
Yeah, that's a great thing to end on there. And again, so sorry you and your family have to deal with this, but I'm so happy that you're taking such a positive approach and trying to help others who are experiencing similar feelings or situations that you guys are. I wish you the best of luck. I will absolutely go and make a donation towards the scholarship this week, and really appreciate you coming on the podcast, Stephen.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we'll talk soon. Have a great week.
You too, brother.
Okay, take care.
Bye bye.
Okay, guys, like we said, we knew that was going to be a very powerful episode, and we just are so grateful to Stephen, one, for trusting us enough to share his thoughts and be so open and honest about how hard it's been for him and his family since they lost their son in this accident. And look at the good that he and his family are trying to do in the world as a way to kind of honor their son and to bring purpose back to their lives. So if they can make something positive out of such a horrible experience, that should give us all hope and make us all think about what we can do to take the negative experiences we're having and turn those things into positive things and impact the rest of the world in a positive way. So again, we'll put Stephen's website on in the show notes. The link to his book is in the show notes. And just really appreciative to Stephen for coming on to the podcast and being willing to talk about his story with us. So very powerful, and we're honored that he trusted us enough to do that. So James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. We've got links to all our social media accounts there. We publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to there. And as always, if you can like, share, comment, or subscribe to our podcast, or whatever platform you consume it on, it's super helpful for us. So don't miss the episodes, guys. We have such good people coming on that have such great messages that we can learn from. Make sure you come back and check out the next one, and we will see you there.